Welcome to Straight Talk with me, Noel Lee, a show where we chat with content creators on YouTube. This is podcast number 3. With me on the show tonight is an American environmental engineering master's student living in Nanjing, China. She has her own YouTube channel called Katherine's Journey to the East. She loves running and cycling, as well as a passionate interest in exploration, especially in China. So without further ado, let me welcome our guest to the show. So my guest tonight is Katherine Olsen. Katherine, thank you very much for being on the show.
It's an honor. Thank you.
So for those of the audience who might not know who you are, would you mind spending some moments to let us know more about yourself?
Sure thing. 大家好，我的名字叫 Katherine， 中文可以叫我杨离子。我来自美国弗吉尼亚州，然后现在我生活在中国南京。我在南京大学学环境工程，我现在是硕士生，马上要毕业了。毕业以后很期待在中国找工作。我还有一个中国男朋友。
I'm surprised by your answer in Mandarin. So how long have you actually taken to be so fluent in your Mandarin?
I started learning Mandarin when I was 20, and I'm 26 now. So yeah, it's been about 6 years. It's been a while. The learning process never ends. I'm still learning.
Wow. So you actually took up your Mandarin learning while in the States?
Yeah, it was kind of like a hobby for me because I wasn't actually studying Mandarin as my degree subject. I was studying environmental science. And then I just started learning Mandarin on the side for fun and just kept going with it, like on and on and on and on up until today. And yeah, I guess I'll be learning for the rest of my life because I've been learning new things still every day. Learned some new Chengyu today. So just keep going.
Wow, I see. So actually, what got you involved? I mean, what sparked you to say, hey, I'm going to take up Mandarin?
It was kind of a weird story, actually. It all happened by chance. I joined a laboratory as an undergrad researcher, and everyone in the lab was Chinese. The professor was Chinese. The other students were Chinese. It was just like a Chinese-speaking workplace. And it wasn't my first time learning a foreign language. I had already learned Hindi before, so I kind of already knew how to do like the learn without a class kind of stuff, like the self-teaching stuff. So I was like, oh, cool. What a great opportunity. I guess I'll just learn Mandarin. And then I did. That's it. It's a really bizarre story. It's not like from my childhood, I was really into Kung Fu movies or I was fascinated by China. It really was this very like random thing, like 缘分, you know. But I'm really glad I learned. It has brought a lot of great opportunities to my life.
So now you mentioned that you have not actually, been influenced by movies and Kung Fu and stuff. So how did that particular love for the culture came about?
Well, the language came first for me. So for a lot of people, they travel to China and they're like, wow, China's amazing. I want to learn Chinese. Or they've experienced some part of the culture at some point. But for me, I actually started with the language and I learned Mandarin pretty fluently. I had a Chinese boyfriend and everything back in college. And I just didn't know anything about China. Like, honestly, knew nothing. When I showed up in China, the image in my head was like New York City, Chinatown. That's what I thought China looked like. And when I showed up, I was like, oh, this doesn't look like what I was expecting at all. I knew nothing about China. But it was after that first visit where I was like, you know, I actually really like this place. This is such a fascinating country. I want to learn more about it. You know, besides just the language, I actually want to be a part of this culture. And that's why I got more involved and got interested in Chinese culture. So language first, culture second.
That is very nice to hear. That, you know, before coming to China, your impression of China was Chinatown. So
yeah, I didn't know anything about China. And there's not really a Chinatown in Virginia, but I'd been to the one in New York, and that was what was in my imagination, which is why when I went to Hong Kong, I was like, oh, okay, so that's where that came from. Chinatown looks like Hong Kong. It doesn't actually look like China. So yeah, I didn't know anything about it though. I just knew like pandas, Great Wall, noodles. I knew nothing about China.
So you mentioned that you went to Hong Kong. So which other countries or places have you actually been to, you know, besides China, coming to China?
Oh, well, before I came to China, I actually hadn't been to any other countries. I personally don't think that Canada counts. It's basically the same. And I'd been to the Caribbean, but I also don't feel like that counts either because I was always in like a tourist bubble in the Caribbean. China was my first time really actually traveling abroad. But once I started living here, I did a ton of traveling. I've been to several countries in Europe. I've been all over Southeast Asia with my internship. I've been to Japan, Korea, Indonesia. I've been to so many places now, but back when I lived in the US, I had not traveled at all. Basically, I had never been anywhere.
That's really nice to know. I've been to Japan and Korea as well, so it's nice to always be able to have a chance to travel abroad from our own countries, right, home
Yeah.
countries, and experience and learn about what actually is happening in other people's country and culture, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. China has so many neighbors. That was a problem in the US. Like, even if you do want to travel, there's nowhere to really go. And my grandmother spent a ton of time in Mexico in her youth. Mexico used to be, a little bit more, I don't want to use the word safe, but it was easier to go to Mexico back then. And now it just feels like there aren't a whole lot of really safe options around the US, or, for example, Canada just feels the same as the US. It doesn't feel culturally different. But living in China, there's so many options all around the entire country. There's Southeast Asia, you got Japan, Korea, you got Russia up north, you got Mongolia, and there's just so many countries bordering on China.
Right. So you mentioned that, again, let me go back when you said that you had no idea of what China was before you came. And when you touched down, you realized that it's like that. Now, is there any aspects of maybe culture shock for you having been in China?
I guess the biggest culture shocks for me were all like food related. I really kind of struggled with some of the food. And to be honest, it's still a problem now. Like how some of the fish has like really tiny bones in it. I still can't handle that now. Like, it amazes me how Chinese people can put a piece of fish or meat in their mouth and then like eat the meat off it and then spit the bones out. Like, to me, that is so hard. I feel like I'm going to choke. But people here do that all the time. Like, it's so easy to them. And there is one other thing that I wasn't very accustomed to at first, but I got used to is, I don't even know what it's called in English, huajiao, like those little numbing little nugget things.
Yeah.
Those things. Yeah. So my very first time in China, I was living in Jinan in Shandong with some other Americans, and we went out to a malashanko place, and we were like eating a whole bowl full of vegetables, and none of us knew how to use chopsticks. So we're like eating it with a spoon and got a whole mouthful of those huajiao things. And I was like, what is this? Like, I bit into it and it just felt like my entire face was numb. I thought my nerves were like messed up. I was like, what on earth is this horrible, horrible thing? And then I realized it's like a seasoning thing. And you're not supposed to eat malashanko with a spoon. You're supposed to like use chopsticks to pick the vegetables out, So that was tough for me at first. I couldn't use chopsticks at all. Like, for my first 3 visits to China, I could not use chopsticks. I would carry a fork and a spoon with me everywhere. And then finally, when I met my current boyfriend, I finally started learning chopsticks because I was afraid he would make fun of me. I was like, that's so awkward. I've been to China all these times. I still can't use chopsticks. Like, I have to impress him. So I just like forced myself to figure it out and finally learned how to use chopsticks.
That's great. It seems to me that the culture shock is not from you, rather it's from the local Chinese people wondering, why is this person eating malashanko with a spoon, right?
Yeah, people were like, what?
Right.
It's not how you're supposed to eat that.
With the fish thing, I also experienced the same. When I think it's called suicu, right? So there are various species of fish, and I myself personally do not like the ones with lots of bones. But you can actually specifically ask for like the breeds that have less bones and more meat. So
I tried that before. They tricked me. I asked, like, does it have, tar, like those little tiny bones? And the waitress was like, no, it doesn't. But the fish was full of them. That's happened to me several times. So I wonder if people just like swallow them, like they don't even notice, they don't even care. Like, I've been lied to by so many waitresses now that I don't even dare to order that half the time. It's like, I hate those bones. I'm so afraid of a bone getting like stuck in my throat.
Understand. But going forward, there are fish slices that has little to no bone. You just need to make sure that you're asking for the right one.
巴沙鱼, 黑鱼, that's where it's at. Those are the 2 safe ones.
I've seen some of your videos where you actually showed how you were interested to join the warriors, right? The China warriors against help, like, was it protection of the environment? So what do these people do? Like, maybe you did something where you actually, based on your studies, you implemented something that actually changed and affected a betterment of the environment. So I guess that was more to let our viewers understand. Even myself, I don't really know what do environmentalists do.
Right? Okay, I get it. I have an example I can give for this. It's not from my own lab, but I personally think this story is a little more interesting than the work that I do. It's in the city of Kunming. that city was originally designed without any wastewater treatment infrastructure. But I know someone there who took me on some tours of the wastewater treatment plants that they added to Kunming. So the city originally had no sewage treatment. All the toilet water, all the sink and bath water, it would just go straight into the water around it. And for obvious reasons, that's a problem. It pollutes the water, it smells, it's unsanitary. So cities all around China are working now to put in wastewater treatment plants in cities that originally didn't have them so that they can treat that water and protect lakes and rivers and the ocean, etc. So Kunming added something like 12 or 13, maybe more now, wastewater plants to the city infrastructure that originally didn't have them. And I visited this one plant that was super interesting. It was actually underground because the city doesn't have enough space. The city's already full of people. They need to find places to fit in these sewage treatment plants and filter and clean this water so that it doesn't keep polluting the lake, because there's a big lake near Kunming called Dianshi. The lake is like green colored from all the pollution. It's got all this algae growing in it. So they're putting in all these efforts to make wastewater plants. So I visited this treatment plant. It was underground, this huge plant. And if you were walking above ground, you never would have thought that that's a sewage treatment plant, because above ground, it's a park. It's a really beautifully manicured park. And then the water, once it's been treated, it comes out like a fountain. There's like a fountain of clear water coming up. And there actually used to be little kids that would try and swim in the fountain because they didn't realize it's a wastewater plant, right? They think it's a park. So little kids would be like playing in the fountain and splashing around, and they had to put a fence around it and everything. But anyway, you would never think there was a wastewater plant there. It's all underground. It takes so much effort to put in that infrastructure in a city that didn't originally have it, which is part of why I think doing environmental engineering in China is so interesting, because it's a densely populated country, for one. And there's all these cities that originally did not have this infrastructure, but the country is now realizing that they need it, right? We don't want like rivers and lakes and the ocean to be polluted and smelly with all this sewage water. So they're adding in all these treatment plants and finding ways to resolve these problems. I think that's a really interesting and exciting thing to do as an engineer. So there's all these amazing wastewater plants all around Kunming, and the canals in the city are getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And it's just awesome, all the progress that they've made towards that.
Now that you mentioned that, so were you actually part of or did you know about how they cleaned up the Yanzi River when, it was really polluted, and then they had this really deep pollution work done? Do you know anything about that?
I've heard some projects related to the Yanzi River, but not like the whole thing. It's a huge river and it still faces a lot of pollution issues, but it's doing okay. I swam across it. I don't know if you saw that video.
Oh, no, not yet. I'll check it out. Yeah, let's check out Katherine's video. I'll put the link in the description below, and you can check it out.
So yeah, the Yanzi River, it's not the cleanest river in the world, but it's doing better than it used to be because people are swimming in it. But I don't know a whole lot about that, because my internship actually has an organization that works with some work that's kind of related to the Yanzi River, but not super close, really related. They do some work with like industries, like industrial parks. So they do like some environmental management work with industrial parks in the Yanzi River kind of region. But I don't know a whole lot about specific like wastewater control for the Yanzi River, because it's such a massive area, right? Like it's huge. Have you heard of some specific project that you wanted to talk about?
No, just trying to learn from the experts like yourself. So
anyways, China's too big. China's so big. There's so many environmental projects going on. I can't keep up with them all. It's crazy.
So when exactly do you finish your course, your master's, and once you graduate, what are your immediate career options?
I'm supposed to finish this September, and I'm not actually planning to look for a job right after I finish my master's, because there's some other things I want to do, some long bike trips I want to go on. I feel like this is the best time to go because I don't have a kid yet. And then once you have a child, you can't really just abandon it for like 3 months or something. So I have some really awesome bike trips planned, like all around Guangdong province, Guangxi province. There's this really great trip I want to do through Southeast Asia, but who knows with the pandemic and everything. I need to go back to the US for a little while and see my family. There's just all this stuff I want to do for maybe like a year after I graduate. And then I'll start looking for a job. And there's a lot of different options. I guess like the most standard option would probably be to go in an international company that happens to have like a headquarters in like Shanghai or Beijing or something. But that's not necessarily going to be the path I go on. I'm not like that picky, I guess, so to speak, like as long as it's related to the environmental field in some way, like it could be working with like an NGO or some kind of environmental organization. That's what my internship is kind of like a civil society organization that works alongside the government to stop polluters and help protect the environment. Or maybe it could be like an engineering firm that does the work I was talking about earlier, like creating wastewater treatment plants or doing all these like design plans for how to prevent certain types of pollution. It could be really like anything. There's so many different options. China's a lot different now than maybe it was 20 or 30 years ago. It feels like in the past, people in the environmental field were like going against the grain, kind of like the government wasn't supporting them. Industries weren't interested or didn't want to like play along with the whole environmental narrative. But there's been a really different pattern going on lately in China. Like as long as the government is on board with something, it's going to happen. And at least from what I can see in Nanjing and a lot of other cities, the government is really on board with the whole environmental protection thing lately, like the fight for the blue skies and all the trees they're planting everywhere, anti-desertification, all of the like wetland parks they're making everywhere. There's so much work going on. So I feel like there's just endless options, but specifically which one, I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to bike around China first. That's priority number one after I graduate.
Speaking of biking, so I understand that you have this love for cycling, and myself, I know a certain Mr. Jerry Gray who has actually biked from Zhongshan all the way to Xinjiang. What do you have plans to date? What was your longest bike trip adventure?
To date, the longest one has only been like single day trips, honestly. Like I haven't done anything really crazy. I'd say the longest one I went on was maybe like 120, 130 kilometers. It was from Beijing to the neighboring city of Tangshan in Hebei. It was not that long because, like the pandemic's kind of been going on for so long. Like it's kind of difficult to do like traveling that is that crazy, like really long trips where you're like traveling to all these little cities. There were all these restrictions for the pandemic, especially for like foreigners and stuff. But I imagine once I graduate, that's another 6 months from now. So it'll be a lot better, I would say. So as of right now, all the trips I've gone on have not been past 150 kilometers. They've all been like one day, single shot trips to somewhere nearby. But the trips I'm planning on going on are going to be like 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, like really long, like continuous itineraries. But I think I need to be out of school for that first, because I would love to do that now, but I'll feel guilty about my thesis, If I'm out biking for like a whole week straight, I'll be like, oh my gosh, my thesis, I have to get back and work on my thesis. Like I won't be able to fully enjoy it until I've graduated. I'll always have that sense of guilt, like go back to school and work on your thesis. You know what I mean?
Besides cycling, you also have a passion for running, because I saw from your videos that you're wearing the marathon shirts.
Yeah.
Right. So I did some marathons in 2011 and 12. I was firstly involved in the Hong Kong Marathon, and I subsequently did the Singapore Marathon and also the Tokyo Marathon twice.
Wow, you did the big name marathons.
So what marathons have you actually done, Katherine?
I did the Hong Kong Marathon, I did Nanjing Marathon, Beijing Marathon, Wuxi, Yixing, and I think there was another one. I don't remember. Oh, Dalian. I did the Dalian Marathon too. I also ran some of my own marathons because I got kind of bored with like the official marathons, because they always put you on like a really broad highway and you're mostly passing like city scenery or like kind of flatlands. I personally really love the countryside. So I got kind of bored with like the official marathons and I started running my own marathons. Like I would go to the countryside and just make my own route that was 42 kilometers or like 40 kilometers and just run it on my own and call it a marathon. So I did that quite a few times, and then my knee got injured, probably from just running too much. I just love the countryside. I love exploring so much. And I just ran too much, I guess, and my knee got injured. And that's why I bought a bike, because I still wanted to go out in the countryside. I still wanted to explore. So if I can't do it by running, I will find another way. So I bought a bike and started doing the same thing. And now I just do with the bike what I used to do running, which is make my own path out in the countryside. I just love to explore new places. I just want to see what I haven't seen before. Like just go in every direction outside of my city and explore everything. I want to see everything. So that's what I do now with my bike. And that is what I did when I ran. And I hope maybe I can take up running again one day, but I keep like testing my knee and it's still kind of like messed up. So I don't know when I can get back to it.
All the best to that knee. I also had some knee issues back in the day, and I was wearing this knee guard. And then as I ran, I just took it off and it was okay. So I hope the same can be for you as well.
Yeah,
so on these adventures, do you do it yourself alone, or does your boyfriend join you?
almost always alone. He's only joined me one time. It's pretty much always just me. He's not super into the same scenery that I'm into. And he doesn't, I don't know, for me, I like enjoy the challenge of going like 100K or 100K or like 120 in a day, but I don't know if that's really like his thing. Like he kind of wants to just do like 20 or 30 kilometers and like call it a day. But for me, I really enjoy the challenge of, for example, like the Beijing to Tangshan route, or like some of the other like routes I went to a certain city, like for example, Nanjing to Yangtze or whatever. I really like the challenge of like reaching that place because I have a folding bike. So I can just bike to the place and then fold out my bike and get on the train and come home. Like I can bike to wherever I want, fold the bike up, get on the train, take a taxi, whatever, you know, I can just go like crazy far. But he's not really into that. He's also not really into the scenery. So as of right now, I haven't really taken him on any rides with me, but after I graduate and I do those like long-term rides, then I'll probably take him. I don't want to do like those alone. It's too long.
Well, it seems like he doesn't really share that particular aspect of your passion with you. So what exactly did he do to actually caught your heart, if I may ask?
Oh, sure. Well, to be fair, biking was something I picked up later. And same with the countryside running. I never explored the outside of my city until I'd already been in China for a while. Like I didn't used to have that habit, you know, that only came like later when I suddenly started thinking like, you know, I wonder what's out there. I've never tried to go check it out. So we do have some hobbies in common, like running. I got really serious into running after I met him. He's the one that got me into running marathons. And we both love like hiking and exploring nature. We both really enjoy like scuba diving. I got him into that. I mean, I've tried some of his hobbies too. Like he tried to get me into snowboarding. I hated it, but I tried. I mean, for him, right? Like whatever. So I'd say we have still quite a few hobbies in common. Just really enjoy going out and exploring together and hiking, running, doing those kind of things. But yeah, I would say we didn't get together like solely based off hobbies either. You know, like I just liked his personality. I felt like we had a lot to talk about, and he was like funny and interesting and seemed like a really caring guy and everything. So and there's a lot of different reasons that came together.
All right. Let me just touch a little bit about some of the things I saw in your video, right? You mentioned some in your videos, you did say that, you know, you get asked a lot about where you come from. And when you give the answer that you're from the USA, what kind of reactions did you get?
Oh my gosh. People always want to talk politics, like all the time. People love to talk politics, either telling me about how ridiculous the US is, like some stupid thing the US did, how bad the US is. People always want to do that. But that wasn't always the case, you know? It's actually just been in this recent year. Previously, when I said I was from the US, I mean, I would get like comments about Trump and stuff. People would be like laughing about Trump. But a lot of people would also have like these weird misconceptions of the US that were like overly positive. That was my previous experience. People would be like, wow, like I heard the US has amazing like medical care, like amazing like trains. I don't know where they heard that from. Like amazing public transport. Like they had all these like kind of skewed misconceptions of the US or whatever. Like people were always telling me how amazing the US is. Like, why would you leave? Blah, blah, blah. That was how things were before. I guess I could just split it to before and after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I got a lot of that. People just talking about how amazing the US is, but they didn't necessarily know much about it. Or they'd be like, I love America, but it's like they've never been. You know, people have just seen it in the movies and they think it's cool. But after the pandemic started, that whole discourse kind of changed to people being like, the US sucks, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure it had to do with the media here too, because everything in the Chinese media about the US is bad. Like it's all negative now. Same with how the US reports China. It's like all negative. So that's the kind of responses I get now when I say I'm from the US. People always want to talk politics. They want to talk about guns. They want to talk about the pandemic. They want to talk about riots. They want to talk about African-American rights. They want to talk about police officers. Like the Chinese media has it down. They have all of America's dirt, like putting it out like every day. You know what I mean? So people always want to talk about that stuff. But it is kind of strange, honestly, for that to be the conversation starter. But whatever, you know, it's funny. It's interesting, I guess.
Yes, I think it's hard for us to, you know, escape this kind of conversations, especially in today's context where, you know, again, we are so closely connected from the advancements of internet connectivity, right? The fact that we're actually having this conversation is due to the magic of media, right? Social media. But I do feel on point with you when you initially said that you had no idea what China was all about until you came here. And I think it's the same for people in China who have no idea what the US is about until they could probably have a chance to go there. And in between, people who are not traveling, those who are staying in the US, those who are staying in China, and then they listen to all these media and they form certain opinions and decisions, and hopefully it won't having any detrimental effect, because at the end of the day, it's up to people who are much higher level than us that affects things. But I hear you. So I wouldn't actually want to start a conversation with a person that I met on a political discussion. I think the fact that we're all here, you are here not because of any political agenda. You are here because you have a love for the Chinese culture, the love for being an environmentalist, and you found your significant other over here. So I think these are the more important things, in my opinion, for us as everyday people, and these are the things that we should really reflect on more, and be able to build on more. And then like this, we build bridges. Now that I've known you, next time if there's a chance to go on a biking ride or a marathon run, who knows, we just join each other, right? So
that'd be great if someone would join me on a bike ride, because it's hard to find people who are, I guess, into that. Like, people usually don't want to bike on all those tiny, like, winding roads, and people don't want to bike as slow as I do and just go slow and look at the scenery. So if you're interested, hit me up.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm actually looking for a bike. I'm actually getting some advice from Mr. Jerry Gray and maybe yourself on how to get a bike that we can go long distance. I'm always very afraid of losing the pressure in the tires.
My bike comes with a pressure inflator in the seat. Like, you can detach the seat and you can pump up the tire of the bike. So might want to look into it.
All right.
It's a good bike.
So Katherine, finally, I'd like to just maybe round off by saying that I'm guessing your foreseeable future is in China.
Yeah.
Now, what are the other plans that you have for your YouTube channel, regarding your adventures in the Asia, your adventures in the East? Sorry.
So I guess for like super short-term plans, I really want to be able to go to Xinjiang. Like, I'm trying to make that work. My thesis is almost done. I'm really trying for like June or July. I've got like all my bike routes like planned out. I've got literally everything planned. It's just like, if I can get those 10 days off, it's totally going to happen. I'm really trying to make that work. So hoping to go to Xinjiang and do some biking around like Turpan and Kashgar and stuff. Got some amazing routes planned. And I'm also planning to take a trip back to my boyfriend's hometown, which is this really small place in Heilongjiang. So we're not only planning to go to his hometown. His hometown's like a small town. We also want to go to his mother's hometown, which is like a tiny village. We don't even know if the people that she used to know are still there. She's lost contact with them. We just know where it is on the map. We found it on the map and we can get to it. So we're going to go visit his mother's birthplace, basically, like this really tiny village in Heilongjiang. So that is on the itinerary for the summer as well. Those are like my two main things that are going to be happening soon. And I'm just super interested in Guangxi province. Like, something about it just like lures me in. I don't know if it's like the karst landscapes or like the villages there. Like, something about that place is just fascinating. Like, I really want to check out Guangxi province, Guizhou, and also, or Guiyang. Sorry, I always mix up Guizhou and Guiyang. Guangxi province, Guizhou, and like Fujian. I really want to check out those areas. So if there's time in the upcoming months, I would really like to go over there, but I'm not sure because trying to graduate. But that's basically it for like short-term plans.
Well, Katherine, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So once again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a thrill having you on the show. Again, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors in China. And to everyone watching, thank you for watching. And until the next podcast, I am Noel Lee, and this has been Straight Talk.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been an honor.